Rain poured like endless sheets of silver across the metal rooftops of the small colony town on planet Orpheon 9. The night was cold, quiet, and full of the kind of silence that made a man listen for things he didn't want to hear. Inside his dusty workshop, Eli Turner sat by a flickering heater, working on a damaged plasma wrench. He was a simple human, a mechanic who fixed broken machines for broken people. The colony wasn't rich, and neither was he. Still, he found comfort in the sound of tools, the smell of oil, and the hum of old engines that reminded him of home. Outside, thunder rumbled. Then choid a knock. It wasn't loud, just a soft, quick tap-tap-tap like someone too weak to use their full strength. Eli frowned. Nobody came here this late, he waited. Another knock came, this time slower, shaking. He stood up, wiping his hands on a rag. "Who's out there?" He called, no answer. Only the rain. Cautiously, Eli moved to the door and unlocked it. The wind pushed it open, bringing in cold mist and the smell of rain. And standing there, trembling, soaked to the bone, was a woman, but not a human. Her skin glowed faintly with a silver-blue shimmer, and her eyes were large, luminous, and full of fear. She looked fragile, like a ghost caught in the storm. Her hair clung to her face, and her clothes were torn, showing marks of travel and struggle. "Please," she whispered, "let me in. Just for a moment." Eli hesitated. He had heard stories. Aliens who tricked humans, smugglers in disguise, even escaped criminals from the high colonies. But there was something desperate in her voice. "Who are you?" he asked. She looked over her shoulder as if expecting someone to appear from the dark. "Please," she said again, her voice breaking. "They're looking for me. I just need to hide." The word they made Eli's heart quicken. Soldiers, bounty hunters? He didn't know, but he could see real terror in her trembling hands. Against his better judgment, he opened the door wider. "Come in before someone sees," he said quietly. She stepped inside, dripping water onto the metal floor. Eli shut the door and bolted it. "Sit down," he said, pulling over an old chair. "You look half dead." She sat, wrapping her arms around herself. "Thank you," she whispered. "What's your name?" "Alira," she said softly. Her accent was strange, melodic but tired. Eli grabbed a dry towel and handed it to her. She took it with shaking hands. "Why were you outside in this weather?" he asked. Her gaze dropped to the floor. "Because I had nowhere else to go." The heater hummed between them. The storm outside grew louder, wind howling through the cracks. Eli studied her closer. She had faint glowing lines on her neck. Not tattoos, but natural markings like bioluminescent veins. They pulsed gently when she breathed. He frowned. "You're not from this colony, are you?" She shook her head. "No, I came here to disappear." Eli sighed and leaned back against his workbench. "Disappear from who?" Before she could answer, they both heard a noise, the deep whine of engines outside. A light swept across the window. Someone was searching the area. Alira stood, panicked. "They found me," she whispered. "Please, if they ask, tell them I'm your wife." Eli blinked. "What, please?" she begged, stepping closer. Her voice cracked. "They won't question a married couple. But if they find me alone, they'll take me." Eli stared at her, rainwater still dripping from her hair, fear in her glowing eyes. She didn't look like a liar. She looked like someone who had lost everything. He sighed again, rubbing the back of his neck. "All right," he said. "But you better start explaining once this is over." Before she could answer, there was a heavy bang at the door. "Open up!"
"Colony Patrol!"
Alira froze. Eli quickly motioned for her to stay quiet. He opened the door halfway. Two armored officers stood outside, their helmets shining under the rain. "Evening, sir," one said. "We're looking for an alien fugitive, female, possibly injured." Eli shrugged casually. "No aliens here, officer. Just me and my wife trying to get some sleep." "Your wife?" The soldier glanced over Eli's shoulder. Alira appeared behind him, her hair wrapped in a towel, wearing one of Eli's old jackets. Her eyes looked human enough under the dim light. She stepped forward shyly and placed a trembling hand on Eli's arm. "Yes," she said softly. "Is something wrong, officers?" The soldier's visor tilted slightly. He scanned her, but the jacket covered her markings. After a pause, he nodded. "Sorry to disturb you, ma'am. Routine search." They stepped back into the storm and the door closed. Eli locked it fast. He turned to Alira. Her hand was still on his arm. She let go slowly, her eyes wet with relief. Thank you, she whispered. You saved me? Eli exhaled and shook his head. You've got some explaining to do, lady. She nodded, trembling. I will, but not tonight. Please, just let me rest. Tomorrow I'll tell you everything. Eli looked at her. This strange woman who had appeared out of nowhere, asking him to pretend, risking his peace for her safety. He didn't understand why he'd helped her. Maybe because she reminded him of someone who once needed saving too. He pointed to a small cot in the corner. You can sleep there, but no more lies tomorrow. Alira smiled weakly. No more lies, she promised. As she lay down and the storm raged outside, Eli sat awake for hours staring at the window. He didn't know what trouble had just entered his life, but something told him this was only the beginning. The storm finally began to fade, but Eli couldn't sleep. He sat near the small heater, staring at the flickering orange light while the alien woman slept on the cot across the room. Every few minutes he'd glance at her, just to make sure she was real. Her name was Elira, she had said. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dark, soft blue light moving beneath the surface like gentle waves. She breathed quietly, hands folded under her cheek. There was something peaceful about her, yet Eli could sense the danger that followed her hadn't ended with the storm. When morning came, the sky outside was pale gray. The colony streets were wet and quiet. Eli brewed a pot of strong tea and sat by the table. Elira woke up slowly, blinking at the strange light filtering through the dusty window. You're still here, he said. She sat up, a little embarrassed. You didn't throw me out, she replied softly. Eli sighed. Not yet. He poured her a cup. Now you said you'd explain everything. Elira wrapped her fingers around the warm cup, but her eyes avoided his. If I tell you, you'll think I'm lying. I'll decide that, Eli said. She hesitated, then took a slow breath. I was taken, she said finally. Humans captured me from my world. They said it was for research, but what they wanted was something else. Eli frowned. What do you mean, something else? They wanted to use my blood, she whispered. My people have energy inside us, light that heals, powers machines, even restores life. They tried to copy it, but when I found out what they were doing, I escaped. Eli leaned forward, his voice low. So those soldiers last night work for the ones who ran the facility, she said. They want me back, not because they care, but because they want my body as a weapon. Eli stared at her, unsure what to believe. It sounded insane, but those glowing marks on her skin, the way the soldiers searched, it all fit too well. He stood and began pacing. You shouldn't have come here. If they track you to this place, they'll destroy it, and me with it. Elira looked down, guilt washing over her face. I didn't have anywhere else to go, she said softly. Every door I knocked on, they turned me away. Humans looked at me like a monster. You were the only one who opened the door. Her voice cracked at the end. Eli stopped pacing. Something about her words hit him deep. Maybe because he remembered being the one knocking once years ago, after his transport crashed and no one helped him. He rubbed the back of his neck. All right, he said finally. You can stay in for now, but we have to be careful. She smiled faintly, the first real smile he'd seen from her. Thank you. They spent the next hours cleaning the workshop and repairing the damage from the storm. Elira moved quietly, her eyes curious about every tool and wire. When she touched a broken battery, the faint light from her hand sparked and fixed the small power cell. Eli froze. How did you do that? He asked. She looked surprised. It's normal. My energy interacts with machines. It's part of who I am, Eli blinked. You can repair tech with your hands? She nodded, embarrassed. Only small things, big ones. They drain me. Eli stared at the recharged battery in disbelief. If anyone saw that, they'd lock you up again, he muttered. That's why I hide, she said simply. Before Eli could answer, a noise echoed outside, the growl of engines. He peeked through the curtain. 3 patrol drones hovered above the street, scanning rooftops. Get down, he whispered. Elira crouched behind a table. The red lights from the drones swept through the windows, painting the walls in crimson. Eli's pulse quickened. He grabbed a piece of scrap metal and threw it toward the back alley, making a loud clang. The drones shifted direction and floated away. When the sound faded, Elira looked up. They're everywhere, she said quietly. Eli nodded. They won't stop until they find you. We need a plan, Elira hesitated. I have something that can help in a signal beacon. It could call my people. But it's broken. Can it be fixed? Eli asked. She bit her lip. Yes, if I had a power crystal. But humans control those. They're rare and heavily guarded. Eli's eyes narrowed. I might know where to find one. Elira looked at him, shocked. You'd help me again? He shrugged. I already lied to the patrol for you. Might as well go all the way. Elira smiled, and not with joy, but with deep gratitude. You don't know what this means to me. Eli turned toward the window, watching the sky clear. Yeah, he said quietly. I think I'm starting to. As daylight spread over the colony, the two unlikely fugitives began to prepare. The storm had passed, but something bigger was coming, and Eli Turner, the simple mechanic, was about to risk everything for the alien woman who had knocked on his door. The night had fallen again, heavy and silent over the colony. The storm was gone, but its memory still clung to the streets, puddles reflecting the pale moonlight, the scent of wet iron in the air. Inside Eli's workshop, only one light burned, a small lamp on the table beside a half-disassembled machine. Eli sat there, staring at the strange metal device Elira had shown him. It looked nothing like human tech. Smooth silver plates softly curved and faint lines of light running through it like living veins. It's a distress beacon, Elira explained, her voice quiet. If I can power it, it will send a signal across the system. My people will come. Eli turned it in his hands, amazed by its design. You built this? No, she said. It's old and older than me. My ancestors created it. It connects to the royal fleet, Eli frowned. Royal fleet? You mean you're some kind of princess? Elira hesitated, then looked away. Something like that. He leaned back, crossing his arms. You didn't tell me that last night. You wouldn't have believed me, she said. And it wouldn't have changed what I needed, safety. Eli exhaled slowly. You're right about that. He studied her face, calm but tired, her glowing skin dim in the low light. So you're royalty on the run. That's why they're hunting you. She nodded. My family ruled one of the free colonies before humans came. When war broke out, they made peace. But the research division betrayed us. They used our genes to build weapons that could imitate our energy. I was supposed to be next in line. Instead, I became their test subject. Her voice trembled and she looked down at her hands. They called it Project Halo. They said it was for peace. But peace built on pain is still war. Eli was quiet for a long moment. Then he said softly, And now you're the last one left. Elira nodded again. The others are gone. I don't even know if my home still stands. The room fell silent except for the low hum of the heater. Eli could feel the weight of her words pressing on him, the kind of loss that no one could fix with tools or metal. He stood up and walked to the window, peering out. The colony street below was still, but he could sense eyes watching, drones, patrols, someone waiting for her to slip up. You can't stay here long, he said finally. They'll come back. I know, she whispered. But if we find that crystal, I can call for help. My people still have ships. They can get me off this world, maybe stop the humans who hunt me. Eli looked at her again, this strange, beautiful creature who carried both light and danger in her blood. You really think your people would come? He asked. She smiled faintly. They always come for their own. He wished he could believe something that deeply. Humans had forgotten that kind of loyalty long ago. As the night deepened, Elira helped him clean up the shop. When she reached for a small generator, Eli noticed faint lines of light glowing beneath her skin again. Does it hurt? He asked quietly. She looked at her arm. The light? No, it only hurts when I'm afraid. My body reacts to emotions. He smiled slightly. So you're glowing scared right now? Her lips curved in a shy smile. A little. Humans are unpredictable. Eli chuckled softly. That's fair. Then, clang. A metallic thud echoed outside. Eli's hand went to the wrench on his belt. He motioned for her to stay quiet. Slowly, he crept toward the door and peered through the small crack. 2 soldiers were walking down the alley, flashlights sweeping over walls and windows. One of them stopped in front of Eli's shop. You sure the scanner showed movement here? The other asked. Yeah, the first replied. Thermal readings. Someone's inside. Eli's pulse spiked. He looked back at Elira. She was already reaching for the beacon, trying to hide it. The lights from her skin glowed brighter with fear. The soldier stepped closer, I'll check this one. Before he could knock, Eli flipped the main switch. All the lights in the workshop went dark. The soldiers paused, confused. Power outage? Maybe, the other said. Let's move on. It's been happening all night. They walked away slowly, boots splashing in puddles. Eli waited until their voices faded before turning the lights back on. Elira exhaled, shaking. You saved me again, she whispered. He gave a small grin. Seems to be a habit now. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the lamplight. You risk a lot for someone you just met, Eli shrugged. I fix things for a living. Guess I just don't like leaving broken things behind. Elira's expression softened. Maybe that's what makes humans special, she said quietly. You help even when it costs you. Eli turned away, pretending not to hear the warmth in her voice. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow we find that crystal. As he shut off the light, the faint glow of her skin filled the dark room, like a heartbeat of hope pulsing against the shadows. Outside, unseen by both, a small red drone light blinked once in the sky, then vanished into the clouds. The hunt wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Morning light spread weakly across the colony, turning the steel streets gold and gray. The air was cold, sharp, and still wet from the storm. Eli Turner hadn't slept all night. He kept replaying the sound of those soldiers outside, their boots, their voices, their search. Now as dawn rose, he worked quickly in his shop, not fixing machines, but hiding things. He pulled a heavy toolbox aside and opened the wooden floor hatch beneath it. Inside was a small storage pit, barely big enough for a person to crouch in. If they come again, Eli said, looking at Elira, you go down here. No sound, no movement. Got it? Elira nodded. Her silver blue eyes were serious now. I understand. Eli placed a small lantern inside the space. It's not much, but it might save your life. Elira smiled faintly. You've already saved it more than once. Eli shook his head. Don't thank me yet. The colony outside was beginning to stir. Vendors opened stalls and distant patrol sirens echoed through the streets. It seemed like an ordinary day, but Eli knew better. He could feel it. Trouble was coming. Then came the first sign. A shadow fell over the workshop window. Eli stepped closer, pretending to check a part on the work table, but his eyes followed the movement outside. 2 armored soldiers walked slowly down the street, scanning every building. Their helmets glowed red with the light of their visors. Elira saw them too. Her breath caught. It's them! Eli's heart tightened. Hide, he said quickly. She ran to the trapdoor, slipped inside, and Eli closed it just as the knock came. Bang, 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 colony security. A voice shouted. Open up. Eli took a deep breath, wiped his hands on his shirt, and opened the door halfway. Morning, officer, he said calmly. The soldier at the front, tall, metal plates shining, stared at him through a tinted visor. We have orders to search all properties in this sector. There's been a report of illegal sheltering. Eli crossed his arms. Illegal sheltering? You think I'd risk my license for that? The soldier ignored him and stepped forward. Step aside. Eli hesitated, just a second too long. The soldier pushed past him. 2 more followed, scanning corners and shelves with their detectors. One paused near the workbench. The device in his hand beeped softly. What's this? He asked, lifting the half-covered alien beacon. Eli's pulse jumped. Old junk, he said quickly. Customer left it months ago. Doesn't even power on. The soldier turned the beacon over in his hands. It hummed faintly with energy. Looks active to me, he said. Eli forced a small laugh. Then maybe you should teach it some tricks. I couldn't get it to light a bulb. The soldier looked at him, silent, hard, then placed the device back down. We'll be taking this for analysis, he said flatly. Eli's stomach dropped. What? It's now property of the Colonial Defense, the soldier interrupted. He turned toward the door, signaling the others. Move to the next building. They left, taking the beacon. Eli waited until the sound of their boots faded, then dropped to his knees and pulled the trapdoor open. Elira climbed out, her face pale. They took it, she said, her voice trembling. My only way home. Eli cursed under his breath. They must have been tracking it. Tears welled in her eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light. Without that beacon, my people will never find me. Eli paced, mind racing. Where do they take tech like that? To the command outpost, she said. East Ridge, near the power fields. He looked at her, determination hardening his face. Then that's where we're going. Elira shook her head. It's impossible. The outpost is guarded, full of soldiers. You'll be killed. Maybe, Eli said, grabbing his coat. But I can't just sit here while they use you like an experiment again. She stared at him, searching his face. Why do you care so much? Eli paused at the door. Because someone once saved me when I didn't deserve it. Guess I owe the universe one favor back. Elira stepped forward, placing her glowing hand on his arm. Then let me help. My energy can hide us for a while. Bend the sensors. But only if we stay close, Eli nodded slowly. All right. Then we do this together. They waited until nightfall again. The colony lights dimmed and silence settled across the streets. Eli packed what little he had. A small weapon, a flashlight, and 2 oxygen filters. Elira stood beside him, her faint light hidden beneath a dark cloak. When the moment came, they slipped out the back door into the shadows. The road ahead stretched toward the ridge, the faint hum of patrol drones in the distance. The hunt had changed now. It was no longer just about hiding. It was about taking back what was stolen. And as Eli glanced at Elira walking beside him, her eyes glowing softly in the dark, he knew this was no longer about debt or duty. Something deeper was pulling him forward, something he couldn't explain. Behind them, unseen, a red drone lens turned and followed their trail. The hunters were not far. The game had just begun. The night was thick with fog as Eli Turner and Elira moved through the narrow alleys behind the colony. Every sound, every drip, every distant engine hum felt sharper, closer. The world seemed to hold its breath. They stayed in the shadows, avoiding the patrol lights that swept across the rooftops. Elira's soft glow was hidden under the dark fabric of Eli's jacket. Every few seconds he'd glance back to make sure no one followed. How far is the outpost? He whispered. Elira's voice was low, calm but tired. About 2 miles east. Beyond the wall, Eli frowned. The wall's electrified. I know, she said softly. But there's a service tunnel below it. I used it once before. When I escaped, her words carried pain. Eli didn't ask how she had managed it the first time. He could guess it hadn't been easy. They reached the edge of the colony, where the metal streets turned into rocky ground. Above them, the tall defense wall glowed faintly blue with energy fields. Beyond it, the outline of the command outpost stood, sharp and silent against the night sky. Elira stopped beside a vent buried in the ground. Here, she said. She knelt, placing her glowing hand against the metal grate. The blue light from her skin spread through the steel, and with a quiet hiss, the lock opened. Eli gave a low whistle. You're full of surprises, she smiled faintly. You've only seen a few. They climbed down into the tunnel. The air was damp and cold, smelling of rust and old oil. The narrow space forced them close, their shoulders brushing as they crawled through the darkness. After several minutes, they reached a hatch that opened into a storage room beneath the outpost. Eli pushed it up carefully and peeked through. Empty. He climbed out, then helped Elira up. The room was filled with crates, weapons, and spare drone parts. At the far end, a glass chamber glowed, the alien beacon sitting on a platform connected to human power cables. There it is, Elira whispered. Her eyes shone. Eli nodded. All right. Let's get your crystal and get out before they... The sound of boots cut him off. Voices echoed from the corridor. Keep scanning. The device is emitting strange readings. Elira grabbed Eli's hand, pulling him behind the crates. They crouched low as 2 soldiers entered. One walked straight to the beacon, typing on a console. The signal keeps pulsing, the soldier said. It's like it's calling something. Then shut it down, the other replied. The first soldier adjusted the controls. Sparks flashed. Can't, it's self-powered. It's using energy from the room, maybe even from us. Eli whispered. That's your energy, isn't it? Elira nodded slightly. It's linked to me. I can feel it. Her hands trembled. If they damage it, the signal will break forever. Eli clenched his jaw. Then we move now. When the soldiers turned toward the door, Eli crept forward. He reached for a loose metal rod on the floor. One quick motion, clank. He tossed it across the room. It hit a pipe, echoing loudly. What was that? One soldier snapped. They went to check. Eli rushed to the console, unplugged the cables, and grabbed the beacon. The machine hummed in his hands, warm and alive. Got it, he whispered. But the moment he turned, an alarm blared. Red lights filled the room. They're here. A soldier shouted, raising his weapon. Eli pulled Elira toward the hatch. Go! Blaster fire exploded behind them. Sparks rained down. Eli dove into the tunnel, clutching the beacon. Elira followed, sealing the hatch above them with a burst of blue light. The tunnel shook from explosions above. Elira's breathing was fast, panicked. They'll follow us. Eli crawled faster, sweat running down his face. Not if we collapse the tunnel. He turned, pointed his tool at a pipe, and fired a pulse charge. The tunnel behind them burst, filling with dust and fire. They coughed and stumbled until they reached the exit vent. Eli kicked it open, pulling Elira out into the open night. They ran until their lungs burned, stopping only when the outpost lights were far behind them. Elira fell to her knees, holding the beacon tight against her chest. Its glow was flickering weakly now. What's wrong with it? Eli asked, kneeling beside her. She stared at the dim light. The signal is broken. The crystal's damaged. It needs one more energy core, or it will die completely. Eli looked around. They were surrounded by the empty plains outside the colony. Where can we get one? She met his eyes, desperate. From the main power grid, the same one that runs the colony. But taking it will shut down everything. Lights, defenses, everything. Eli thought for a moment. Then we take it. Her voice shook. If we do, the humans will hunt us. They'll see it as an act of war. He looked at her seriously. If it saves your life, then maybe it's worth the war. Elira's eyes softened, glowing brighter now, not from fear, but from something else. You'd risk everything for me? Eli gave a small smile. Guess I already have. She touched his hand, and for a moment, the light from her skin passed into his, soft and warm. In the distance, the sound of sirens began to rise again. The chase wasn't over. But for the first time, Elira wasn't running alone. The night wind howled across the barren plains as Eli Turner and Elira ran. The broken beacon pulsed faintly in her hands, its light flickering like a dying star. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder. Engines shouting, the sharp hum of search drones cutting through the air. Keep running, Eli shouted over the wind. I can't. Elira gasped. The beacon's heavy. Give it to me, he said, grabbing it from her arms. Just move. They sprinted across the rocks, every step echoing like thunder. Searchlights from patrol ships swept over the ground, slicing through the fog. The colony glowed behind them in the distance, and a city of steel and betrayal. Ahead lay only the dark ridge, a maze of canyons that could hide them if they reached it in time. A drone dropped low, red lights flashing. Down, Eli yelled. He pushed Elira behind a boulder just as the drone fired a burst of plasma. The rock exploded, scattering dust and sparks. Elira's eyes glowed brighter, panic rising. We can't outrun them. Eli turned, pulling a pulse charge from his belt. We don't have to. He waited, one heartbeat, two, then hurled the charge. It exploded mid-air, sending the drone spinning into the dirt in a burst of fire. The light dimmed. Silence followed, broken only by their ragged breathing. Elira stared at him, shocked. You're insane. Probably, Eli said, coughing through the smoke. But it worked. They pressed on, climbing the ridge. The ground turned rough, sharp stones cutting into their boots. Above, the moons of Orpheum 9 cast a pale silver glow, lighting their way. As they reached the canyon mouth, Elira slowed. They'll keep tracking my energy, she said quietly. They can sense it. Eli stopped beside her, chest heaving. Then shut it down. I can't, she said. It's who I am. It's my life. He stared at her for a long second, her glowing skin, her trembling hands. Then we use it, he said finally. We make them chase the light on while we go the other way. Elira frowned. What do you mean? Eli dropped his pack, pulled out a small generator and attached the beacon to it. You said this thing feeds on energy, right? So let's feed it. Make it shine like a signal flare. Realization flashed in her eyes. You'll draw them away. Exactly. I'll set it to run on auto. Once they lock onto the signal, we slip through the back of the canyon. They'll be chasing ghosts. Elira grabbed his arm. That's dangerous. If they see you, he smiled faintly. They already do. For a moment, they just looked at each other. The human and the alien. Two fugitives bound by choice, not chance. Then she nodded. All right. Let's end this chase. Eli activated the generator. The beacon roared to life, flooding the canyon with blue light. It was blinding, beautiful, like a piece of a star burning on the ground. Almost instantly, the sound of approaching aircraft grew louder. They're coming, Eli said. Let's move. They ran into the narrow path between the cliffs, their shadows dancing against the walls. The air grew colder, filled with echoes of engines, but the light behind them was too bright and too loud. The machines had spotted it. Missiles streaked down, striking the ground near the false signal. The explosion shook the canyon like thunder. Rocks tumbled from above. "Run!" Alira cried. Eli grabbed her hand and pulled her forward as the ground split behind them, the air filled with dust, heat, and fire. They stumbled out onto a higher ridge just as the lower path collapsed into rubble. When the smoke cleared, the beacon was gone, buried under the fallen rocks. Eli bent over, coughing. That should keep them busy. Alira stared at the destroyed canyon, tears forming in her glowing eyes. "It's gone. The beacon, my connection to home." Eli placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll build another way. You said it yourself, your energy can fix machines." She shook her head slowly. "It's not just a machine, Eli, it's my people's voice. Without it, I'm lost." He looked at her, his voice steady. "Then I'll help you find a new one." For the first time, she didn't argue. She just looked at him, really looked him, and whispered, "You're not like the others." He gave a tired grin. "That's what they always said about me." From far below, searchlights still moved across the plains, unaware that their targets were already miles above. The two of them sat quietly on the ridge for a while, watching the sky turn violet. Alira leaned against him, exhausted, the faint light from her skin casting a soft glow over the rocks. "We bought time," Eli said softly. "Now we find that power core. You said it can save the signal, right?" She nodded weakly. "Yes, if it's still stable." "Then tomorrow," he said, "we go after it." Below in the dark valley, the hunters gathered around the wreckage of the beacon. Their scanners buzzed, picking up faint traces of energy, but no bodies. "They're still alive," one soldier said. The commander's visor glowed red. Then the chase continues. Dawn came soft and golden over the ridges of Orphean 9. The night's chase had ended, but Eli Turner and Alira were far from safe. They sat near the edge of a dry canyon, the broken beacon between them, its faint blue pulse now barely alive, like a fading heartbeat. Eli's eyes were red from exhaustion. He had stayed awake, watching the horizon for patrols. Every gust of wind brought dust and silence, but no soldiers yet. Alira stirred beside him, weak but calm. The early light touched her skin, making her glow pale silver. She looked almost otherworldly, like a dream that refused to fade. "Is it morning already?" she asked softly. "Yeah," Eli said, rubbing his eyes. "Still no sign of them." She looked down at the beacon, brushing her fingers over its cracked surface. "It's dying," she whispered. "Without power, it will vanish completely, and with it the signal to my people." Eli studied the ridgeline in the distance. "Then we get what you need, that power core." Alira shook her head. "It's suicide. The main grid is deep inside the colony. Guards everywhere. If you're caught, I won't be," he said, standing. "You said one core is enough to bring the beacon back. I'll take it and be out before they even notice." She reached for his arm. "Why do you keep risking your life for me?" He smiled faintly. "Because the first night you knocked on my door, you reminded me what it means to care." I'd forgotten that, her eyes shimmered. "Eli," he gently pulled free. "Stay here. Keep the beacon safe. If I'm not back by nightfall, I'll wait," she interrupted, her voice trembling. No matter what. The colony looked peaceful from afar, a city of metal and light surrounded by dust. But inside, every corner hid cameras, drones, and soldiers. Eli moved through the shadows, wearing a scavenger's coat and carrying an old maintenance pass. He blended in with the workers heading toward the power plant. His heart pounded with every step. Inside, the plant hummed with energy, massive blue reactors spinning behind glass walls. The air crackled with static. In the center, the power cores glowed like bottled suns. He slipped into a maintenance shaft and crawled toward the lowest level. Sparks lit the dark as he pried open a control panel. "Come on, just one of you," he muttered. After several tense minutes, he lifted out a small cylinder, glowing bright and steady. "Got you." But as he turned to leave, a voice barked behind him. "Freeze!" Two soldiers aimed rifles at his back. Eli raised his hand slowly. "Look, I was just— drop the core!" One shouted. He dropped low instead. A flash of light burst. He'd thrown a spark charge from his sleeve. The explosion threw the soldiers off balance. Eli bolted through the hallway, alarms blaring. He ran until his lungs burned, crashing through a side door and leaping into a waste chute that shot him out beyond the colony wall. He hit the ground hard, rolling through the dirt, clutching the core. Above him, sirens screamed. Searchlights spun wildly. But Eli was already running back toward the ridge. By the time he reached the canyon, the sun was setting. Alira was there, waiting just like she said. When she saw him, tears filled her eyes. "You came back, didn't I promise?" he said, holding up the core. Together they placed it into the beacon. The machine came alive instantly, blue light spreading across its surface, lines glowing brighter and brighter until it filled the canyon with radiance. Alira's skin shimmered in response, her energy connecting with it. The air hummed. The sky above cracked open in light as if the heavens themselves had heard her call. From beyond the clouds, massive silver ships appeared, alien crafts, silent and majestic. Descending like angels of light, Eli shielded his eyes. "You did it." Alira stood, tears glowing on her cheeks. "We did it." Moments later, figures emerged from the light, tall, elegant beings of her kind. They bowed to her, speaking in a melodic language Eli couldn't understand. One of them looked at him and said, "Human, you saved one of our last royals. You have our gratitude." Alira turned to Eli. "They came because of you, because you believed when no one else would." He smiled softly. "Guess pretending to be your husband wasn't such a bad deal after all." She laughed through her tears. Then, stepping close, she touched his hand. A wave of warmth flowed through him, light wrapping around his arm, marking him with a faint glowing line. "What's this?" he asked. "A promise," she said. "You'll never be forgotten among my people." The ships began to rise, their engines lighting the canyon. Alira looked at him one last time, her face filled with sadness and gratitude. "I wish I could stay," she whispered. "I know," he said. "Just don't forget the man who opened the door," she smiled. "Never." And then she was gone, rising with the ships into the golden sky, leaving a trail of light behind her. Eli stood alone, the wind whipping through the canyon. The faint glow on his hand pulsed once, her last goodbye, before fading into the night. He looked up at the stars, a small smile on his tired face. "Safe journey, Alira." And somewhere in the vast dark of space, a voice answered softly in his mind, "Thank you, Eli Turner." The mechanic-turned hero watched the stars until the last shimmer disappeared beyond the horizon. Then he picked up his tools, slung his pack over his shoulder and started walking toward whatever story came next.